I don't even know what's happening here. Are we ever leaving this theater? Like it
We are talking about Amsterdam, whether we want to or not. The power of David O. Russell compels us. I do not envy you, Alonso, for having to describe this movie because I don't know how.
It removes all pain. Guys like me, we have to turn to booze, the morphine, and that can lead to addiction. Oh, that's fast.
So it's the 1930s, and Christian Bale and John David Washington are best friends. They were in World War I together. They find themselves having to investigate a murder when their old general from the war dies under mysterious circumstances. Then we get flashbacks, and we find out they were both injured, and who should nurse them back to health but Margot Robbie. And the three of them become this very tightly bonded unit. Margot Robbie and John David Washington fall in love. Christian Bale has a wife back home, but he's besties with both of them. They spend the post-war years in Amsterdam living la vie boheme, but eventually Bale and Washington have to go back to New York, where, of course, wouldn't you know it, they run into Margot Robbie again, who helps them out in there trying to figure out who the murderer of the general is. Along the way, they get tied up with a weird rich couple played by Rami Malek and Anya Taylor-Joy, a couple of spies played by Michael Myers and Michael Shannon, or Mike Myers and Michael Shannon. I've always wanted to see those two together. And another prestigious former general played by Robert De Niro, whose wife, incidentally, is played by Beth Grant. Yay for Beth Grant. So, look, the thing about David O. Russell movies that work, for me, and I think your definition of which ones work varies. Like, I love I Heart Huckabees. Not everyone does. What's exciting about those movies is they seem like they could fall apart at any moment. It seems like he's doing this high wire act of like moods and tones and performances and plot developments where you're just like, how is he going to drag this whole thing to the finish line? And at his best, he does. And at his worst, like in Amsterdam, he does not, and it does all fall apart. And so this movie, he's doing all the things that you expect David O. Russell to know how to do. He's giving you crazy, plot twists and tonal shifts and big shoot the moon ideas, but also like intimate character moments. And this time, you just are seeing all the pieces fall on the floor, not near each other, and it's a very hot mess.
This movie is such a mess. It is so meandering, and I just found myself over and over again while I was watching it going, what is this movie about? Like, I just couldn't, I'm like losing my own place as I'm watching it. I'm like having to find my bearings going, wait a minute, is it about this? And now why are we here? And then none of the little tangents and detours and idiosyncrasies is nearly as clever or charming as he seems to think they are. There is so much shtick and so much mugging and so much acting from these people. You totally forgot about also Alessandro Nivola and Matthias Schoenaerts.
Oh, right, yes.
Chris Rock for like 2 seconds to just show up and make jokes about white people.
Andrea Riseborough.
Right. You never forget that Chris Rock is Chris Rock. I mean, he's come in from a totally other planet to be Chris Rock in this world. Timothy Olyphant is in this as
unrecognizable.
Like this, like, is he like a Nazi? I don't know. You also have Zoe Saldana as the
nurse
who does the autopsy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's this insane cast, and I would have liked various different movies about various other characters that are not this trio at the center of it.
We have to mention Taylor Swift. We'll hear from the Swifties if we
Taylor Swift, and I never forgot for a second that I was watching Taylor Swift. She's so stiff in this. Like the Rami Malek and Anya Taylor-Joy stuff is kind of weird and quirky, and I enjoyed that world. The whole Alessandro Nivola, Matthias Schoenaerts as these detectives who are paired up together who don't get along with each other, like that's amusing here and there. Emmanuel Lubezki shot this. So it is like super duper sepia tone because David O. Russell is like, ooh, look, we're back in time. It's history.
Our friend Robert Abley reviewed this for The Wrap, and he said this may well be Emmanuel Lubezki's ugliest movie.
Right. But then there are moments where, he shoots Margot Robbie or Zoe Saldana, and they are luminous, like incredible close-ups of how beautiful these women are. Like
because he's not shooting it through a tea bag like the rest of the movie.
Right. The costume design is incredible. It is partially from legendary costume designer Albert Volsky, who's like 90 years old and did the costumes for Grease.
Yeah.
Right. So it's got some pieces here and there that are compelling, but it never comes together. And then at the end, you have like 3 different characters making these like huge long monologues explaining to us what the film itself could not accomplish in the previous 2 hours. Like Margot Robbie's got this whole long narration explaining to us over images that we just saw how we're supposed to feel about things. And I'm like, what are we wasting our time here for?
The movie is reaching for a very specific kind of relevance, and what it has to say about those issues, I'm on board with. I'm not mad at this movie for what it's pointing out. I feel like I'm a teeny bit kinder to it only in that there are specific moments that work, and there were ideas that I thought were kind of cool and that they were sort of trying to explore in a certain way. But then between those moments and between those ideas, you're like, what? I don't even know what's happening here. Are we ever leaving this theater? Like it just goes off in these really crazy directions that don't mean anything. And it's, and again, I think so often with the movies of his that I like, it's almost part of the thrill of the movie is just the chutzpah of him trying to do all the things he's doing, and is he going to pull it off? And man, because of that, when he fails grandly, and this is a grand failure. But
it's something like American Hustle, like that's got a verve to it, like a visual language, and like there's a flashiness that's totally compelling and fun. Like Silver Linings Playbook, there's a humanity to it and a vulnerability to these characters, and they feel like actual people in a way that nothing here ever does. Like no one here feels like a person. Christian Bale, like he's a collection of quirks. He's got like frizzy hair and a glass eye that keeps falling out, and he's talking in this ridiculous accent. And like, it's just, that's what they all are. Margot Robbie is a manic pixie dream girl.
And has no chemistry with John David Washington.
None. Both beautiful, gorgeous people with no actual spark. Yeah, that whole like platonic throuple thing that they have going, it's fun a little bit here and there when they are in Amsterdam, the titular Amsterdam.
Sure.
But then there's a whole other movie we have to watch beyond that.
And what's frustrating is that because I did endorse the political message of this movie, what it has to say about corporatism and, how fascism becomes a thing and how corporate, interests make that happen given the state of the world right now, I wish that this were a movie that I could send people to, or that audiences would come away with and really maybe think about how, because I always joke we're destined to forget everything we learned in the 20th century and just do it all over again. I think that's a message that could land and should land, but boy, this is not the vehicle to make that happen.
It is both empty and overstuffed, right? It is both like frantic and meandering.
Yes.
So I'm saying 3 for like the costumes.
Yeah, I said 4.8 for the costumes, for the purity detail, and again there are these like individual moments that I could pull out and be like, I like that scene, I like this interaction, this made me laugh, but man, those are few and far between.